Hi, I'm Dr. Christine Hanlon from the University of Central Florida. I'm here to talk to you about the SMCRE model. It's one of the most current models that we use to talk about communication nowadays, and it's been in existence from about the 1980s. So it's an acronym that explains the components of the model. So the SMCRE model, like I said, the components of the model are in the acronym. So the first S is for source. The source is who generates the message, right? So it's the speaker, or the source. Sometimes you'll see people use the S for speaker. Sometimes you'll see them use it for the source. The next component is the message. And that is the information that we're relaying from the source to the receivers, which brings us to the R. We'll skip right down there to the receivers or the audience, right? The E, well, let's go back to the C. The C is for the channel. And as I've mentioned previously, the channel has changed over time in how we define it, how we think about it. So initially, when the first communication models were developed around the 1940s, what we saw was the channel was considered the five senses. So looking at your taste, hearing, smell, touch, sight, those types of things. Some of those don't really match, like smell and taste. Do you really taste or smell the message? Well, sometimes, but not usually. So the channel has kind of gone by the wayside by the time the 1980s comes about. In the 1980s, when they're talking about the channel, they're talking about how literally the message is moving from the source to the receivers. So literally, how is it getting from point A, the source, to point B, the receivers? So during that period of time, let's say you were talking face-to-face. You'd be using the air. You'd be talking about airwaves being the message. So your message from the source to the receiver going through the airwaves from point A to point B. Well, if you were talking on the phone in the 1980s, you'd be talking on a device, right? That was connected to a cable. And that cable would deliver the message through the fiber optics from the source to the receiver. So the cable, right, would be the channel. And so that's a different channel than if you were speaking face-to-face. And so those are the ways we kind of thought about the channel back in those days. Well, come the 1990s, when we have technology changes, especially with cell phone systems, we have all of a sudden our phones are not corded any longer. And now we're using what to move the message from the source to the receiver? We're using the airwaves. And so all of a sudden in the 1990s, everything becomes air, even with Wi-Fi, right? So in the early 1990s, the beginnings of having internet available to the masses, we still had internet connections that were wired. But come the end of the 1990s, beginning of the 2000s, we're using air for just about everything. So what happens is the concept of the channel then becomes kind of obsolete. Like everything's the air. So why even bother calling it a channel? Just say it's the air, right? That doesn't make any sense. So they changed the way that we define the channel. So nowadays, when we're talking about the channel, we're talking about the modality. We're talking about how you're communicating. So whether that's over the phone, whether that's a text message, whether it's an email, whether you're talking face-to-face, that is the modality. That is the channel of communication. That's how we think about it nowadays. The last component of the model is the environment. And the environment is where we have many different types of issues. In the module, we talk about the concept of noise and how noise becomes an issue in the environment. Communication noise is anything that distracts us from communicating. And so any kind of noise in the environment is going to affect our ability to communicate. So the environment becomes extremely important with the SMCRE model. Now, when we're talking about the SMCRE model, there's two big things that you want to understand. You want to think about what is the component that you have the most control over, and which component you have the least control over. So when you're looking at these different components of the model, which one do you think you have the least control over? So let's take them one by one. So the source is you, right? Do you have some control over yourself? Well, yeah, right? And you can control the way you look, right? Like some days you're coming to a class and you haven't taken a shower, you're throwing a hat on, maybe you still have pajama pants on, you know what I'm saying? Maybe not really put together as well as other days. Maybe when you have a presentation and you're putting a suit on and you're looking good, right? You can control things, but you can't control certain aspects of yourself. I can't change who I am in a lot of ways. I can't make myself look like Colonel Sanders from KFC, because that's what most people think about when they think about what a professor of public speaking is going to look like, right? That's the image they get in their mind. They don't see me. But I can't be that, right? I can't change myself to be that. I am who I am. So there are certain things about myself I can't change. Sometimes people will be like, oh, you can get plastic surgery. And, there are limitations, right? There are limitations. So there's certain things that you can do to spiff yourself up, make yourself look a little bit better, but there's not a whole lot you can do. You got what you got, right? So the message you have control over. You can make some choices here. The channel, can you choose the channel? In some respects, in most situations, you're given the channel though. It happens in the moment of time, or your boss says, hey, you've got this presentation, I want you to go to this place and present it. And there are very few times, though nowadays it's getting more options with that, but very few times that you can say, you know, I really don't want to go to their office, I would rather call them on the phone and talk to them instead. Nowadays, there are some leeways, though, where you can be like, I'm going to Zoom it, right? And you can save your company a ton of money by doing that, especially if the presentation's out of town. If you need to take a flight there and you Zoom it instead, you saved a ton of money for that organization. So there's some things that you might have a little bit of leeway with the channel, but usually that's kind of dictated by the situation. Receivers, can you control your audience? No, not at all. Like these people, you can't control anything. They have minds of their own. They do their own thing. I've had really strange situations where students have done unusual things in the classroom. I could tell you stories, but you're like, that is not normal behavior, right? Sometimes people, you just can't control them. And so we always got to be considering the receivers. The environment, can you change the environment? There are certain things you can do with the environment. If you have access to the control panel for the air conditioning unit, you could raise or lower the temperature in the room. That is a good thing. Think about that beforehand. Always make it a little bit colder rather than a little bit warmer if you're going to be doing public speaking. That's always a better situation for you. But those types of things, think about the environment. You can move the chairs around. You can situate the environment in certain ways. You do have some control over the environment. But the ones that you have the most and the least control over, you have the most control over the message. There we go. Oh, this marker's not working as well as I was hoping. There we go. So this is the most control. There we go. I just have to write a little bit smaller on that one. Is there another blue? There's no other blue, and this is the one that I didn't test. There we go. Come on. There we go. Well, you can kind of see it. Not as good as I'd hoped, but that's all right. All right, so most control over the message. You can choose what you're going to say. Your boss might say, hey, we want you to give this presentation at this particular location, and they're giving you the topic, right? You get to choose, how am I going to develop this message? What are the main points going to be? How am I going to introduce the message? What types of evidence am I going to use for the message? You have a lot of control over the message. And when we talk about the ELM, you'll see the message is so important, so it's really great that we have a lot of control over the message. The part that we have the least control over, oh, green, work for me, come on, let's go, are the receivers. So the receivers, you have the least control over them. You never know what they're going to do. And it'd be nice to have control over your audience, especially if you're selling things, right? Because then you could be like, oh, this is what you want to do, and you could persuade them very easily. But we do have the least control over what they're going to do. So it's something to consider. We have the most control over the message. That's very comforting, because that's something that we can control. That's something that we can plan for. That's something that is easy for us to manipulate. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the ELM. So SMCRE model. This is the SMCRE model. Hopefully now you know all about the SMCRE model. You'll get an A on your test, and you'll be a more effective communicator.